Right, let's dive straight in. What's tip number 1 for us today?
So tip number 1 is teach behaviour lesson 1 by making developing the right classroom culture your lesson objective in those early lessons.
Ooh, I like it. Tell me about this.
Well, I think this one really comes from me first of all explaining what I believe the goal should be as a teacher of any subject. So, I'm maths, but it could be any subject. I honestly do believe that the goal should be that you're aiming for 100% of the things that you say in a lesson are about your subject and 0% are about behaviour. Now, clearly that's a very high standard to have, and you're never going to achieve that every lesson every day, but I do think it's what you should be aiming for. And it's really interesting, because the other day there was a young lady on Twitter who I think very genuinely put a message on saying, I'm an ECT, starting in a few weeks' time, how should I start in September? And loads of people came in with similar things to what I'm saying. So start with being very clear about where you stand, how you want the class to run, and running the room, and Tom Bennett, and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of people just came back just saying, like, no, I don't believe that, just start teaching, they'll pick it up, the school should have explained the rules to them, they're already teenagers, they should know all this. And I just don't buy into that at all, really. I really don't think that as educators we can criticise young people for not behaving if we haven't explained to them what that behaviour should look like or should be. So I'm all for starting with how we're going to run this class. And also, I listened to episode with Tom Bennett, and it was really good to hear him, because I was kind of doing all this stuff way back really before I was reading any Tom Bennett or listening to podcasts, and it was really interesting to hear him come on and say exactly the same thing. So I mean, what I would say is this is not a rules lesson. This is not a whole hour where you're at the front going through my 45 rules of my class and write them all down, and I'm going to test it. It's not nothing like that. It's just being really clear about how you want the class to function.
Right, this is great. Let's dive into this a little bit. So I've done both sides of this. I've tried both. When I first started teaching, I was all about laying down the kind of rules first, and then I thought,
sure,
I'm not so sure. Maybe it's do the content first and the rules kind of come a bit later. I'm swinging back the other way around, but I'm really interested in the practicalities of this, Femi. So I wonder, can you talk us through what would this first lesson look like? Perhaps starting out with these lesson objectives, because that's an area where it often kicks off here. Are you writing those down on the board for these behaviour lesson objectives?
No, I don't so much mean that. What I mean is that often teachers would say, oh yes, lesson 1 today, I'm starting off with Pythagoras, what are you doing? Or I'm going to do expanding brackets. And they've already got a lesson objective which is maths related in their head, and they want the pupils at the end of that hour to understand how to expand single brackets, which of course is what we would normally do. What I'm advocating more is my lesson objective, lesson 1, lesson 2, is that we create the right culture. So of course you're teaching maths, but actually I'm not that interested in how much maths is learned in those few lessons. What I'm interested in is, do I get the culture right so that I can teach maths very quickly and effectively in the lessons that come after the first couple. So I'm not putting them up anywhere. It's just that I'm having that in my mind as how I want this to go. So I would always be, if you come out of lesson 1 and you say to your colleague in the classroom next door, how did it go? And he or she says, oh yeah, they can all expand brackets now, or they're all finding multipliers, they're really good. That's not really kind of what I was asking. What I'd be asking more is, how did it go in terms of setting the tone for the year?
Got it. All right, well, let's talk about setting the tone then, Femi. What are some of the things you're looking for in that first lesson, and how are you bringing them about? Are you modelling it and then getting the kids to practice? How does this play out practically?
So I think very similar to what you said earlier is that I got it a little bit wrong in my earlier years of going for too much depth in rules. And trying to go through sort of 8-9 things I wanted the kids to know. Now I've boiled it down to just 3 things that I explain very clearly. I do make the kids write it down. We never ever refer back to those bullet points, but I do make them write it down, I think, to get across to them that this is something that's really important to me. And those rules are just 3 things. One is a seating plan. You will sit where I've asked you to sit, and the reason for that is that if I have you in a seating plan, I straight away know who all of you are, and I can address you all by name. So it's not about behaviour. I haven't gone to check with your head of year or your tutors who the worst behaved people in year 8 were, nothing like that. It's just I want to be able to eyeball you and say, Tom, how do you feel about question 4? Liam, how do you feel about, and I can do that if I've got you in a seating plan. So that's the first one. The second one is starters. I always say to them that other than this lesson, because of course this is lesson 1, When you walk into this room, straight away there will be a starter on the board, and you are expected to come in and get on with that immediately. You're not going to open the window, you're not going to go and get a bottle of Coke off your mate, you're not going to go and check something on your phone or anything like that. You are straight in, sat down, and get on. Whether you call it starter, retrieval, do now, whatever it is, it's all just something that we've learnt in the past that you're recapping. And the last one is social skills. There is one of me, there are 25, 30 of you. This can only work if you've got something to say, you put your hand up. And then I just basically just kick off. But they've written that down, they've got it in their book, and I think the really key thing from there is that you devilishly follow through with that. So quite often, very early on, you'll see someone just quite honestly sometimes, or genuinely, just, oh, sir, I need a new pen. Sorry, my mum bought that's calling out, or in lesson 2, you'll see a pupil come in and just wander over to the back of the room because he hasn't been in your classroom before, and he just wants to see the rugby pitch because you can see it from your class, and he just wants to see if he can see his bike. No, that is not coming in and getting on with the start straight away. So you're setting these up, and then you're always going back to them, and you're kind of being a bit of a dog with a bone with it, and I think that's really important.
I like it. Okay, just one observation and then just a couple of follow-up questions. I'll tell you where I see this go wrong, Femi, is with your scheme of work, with schemes of work, particularly those that are jam-packed around that first term, and particularly schemes of work that are lesson by lesson, and I have a big problem with them, just full stop anyway. A teacher can look and think, I've got to get through these objectives in this lesson, so I don't have time for this behaviour thing. I'm guessing that, because you said you're not that bothered how much maths gets done, but you can imagine for a less experienced teacher, it's quite hard to make that call, isn't it, and say, I'm going to essentially sacrifice content in the short term because I'm going to get the dividends in the long term. It's quite a big shout for a less experienced teacher.
No, it is, and actually it's interesting you say that because on our schemes of work at my school, which I've written myself, they specifically in week 1 say something like classroom routines and setting culture, and that's all it says for the week. Now I wouldn't expect a teacher to be doing that for a week, but I've deliberately put that there so that there isn't straight away pressure of how far are you up with your 8s, Craig? What are you on? Oh, I'm on. Oh, I'm behind. I don't want that. So it's not going to happen for a week. I would expect that teachers would be teaching the scheme of work in lesson 1 or definitely lesson 2. But I've put it there to take away that pressure. But that's only my school, so I agree with you. And I've worked in schools before. I was a head of department, writing the schemes of work myself, where you go in and it is straight away circle theorem, lesson 1. And I think that comes something from leadership. Really, is heads of department should be realising that actually probably for a young teacher, the number one thing that's making them sweat and worry a little bit over the summer will be the behaviour. It won't be teaching expanding brackets. It won't be circle theorems. These people have got degrees. It will be setting the climate of their classroom. So that's the kind of conversation that people should be having with their mentors or their heads of department. And if that isn't happening, then go and have that conversation with your mentor, your head of department. Or actually, I've got another tip later on which will help with that as well.
Fantastic. Just 2 more quick points on this. How long roughly, Femi, would it take to go through these 3 rules in that first lesson?
Yeah, well, again, I mean, I made the mistake in my early years at my first school of it taking half an hour, 45 minutes, and it shouldn't be that. We are talking between the last pupil walking in and the first bit of maths being done, at most 10 to 15 minutes, nothing more. So we're pretty quickly getting on to maths. Yeah. Got it. And final question, you mentioned kind of revisiting these rules, retrieving these rules, keeping the standards high in subsequent lessons. Is that a case of just you looking out for the behaviour and if it's not where you want it, kind of picking the kids up on it? Or are you explicitly providing retrieval opportunities? I'm thinking along the lines of in your starter, maybe saying things like, what are our 3 rules in this classroom? Or is it more just a more organic process than that? Yeah, no, I would personally see referring back to those rules with teenagers or kids who are secondary as being a little bit corny. My daughters in year R going into year 1, and I would say it would be perfectly reasonable for the teachers there to say, right, year R, what were our rules for hand washing? Oh, we always do it. That's all right. But I think with teenagers, I wouldn't be putting it in a starter, but I would be constantly going back to it. I can still remember in one school I worked in, teaching a bottom set year 11, and I did all this stuff, and I started teaching, and I was about 10 minutes into my first topic of whatever it was I was doing, and a kid, in a well-meaning way, because I got to know him better actually, just shouted out, "Sir, is it true you used to be a doctor?" And that was him, just because he was that kind of quite jumpy, I want to say something kind of kid, and straight away, just bang, I got on him straight away with, what did we say about calling out? What did I say to you 10 minutes ago about how I want to... And you can almost see the mood of the class switch to, okay, this isn't just a teacher who's got rules, this is someone who's actually going to follow up on that. And we just basically didn't have that for the rest of the year. Maybe minor little corrections, but it's really important that you follow through with it.
Fantastic. Right, Femi, what
There's
is
another thing, actually. I'm actually...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm actually really hot on as head of department as well. People not interrupting those first lessons. I've been known to send people away because they've come. Lesson 1. "Hi, sir, we just want to... Can we borrow a set of compasses for the sun?" "No, sorry, you can't." Now, that would never be happening in lesson 5, 6, 7. But in lesson 1, I want to show the pupils there's nothing more important for me than setting up the culture of this class. I've actually sent that person away. And you often see kids like, he just said... what happened? And I think it's quite a good message to send the kids. There's nothing more important than me and you having this conversation.
I like it. And I mean, who on earth is using compasses lesson 1? That'd be my question as well, Femi.
Well, there you go. It does happen.